Let's have a look at the pyramid scheme, the book exchange. So in the book exchange, there's a promise of up to 36 books and you only have to send out one book. So it sounds like a great idea, but let's look at what's really happening. So let's say I start this book exchange. So I share it with 6 people, who then share it with 6 people, and so on. So let's follow a branch. So I share it with my sister and 5 other people. Then my sister shares it with 6 people, one of them being my brother. So I receive my book from my brother and everyone in that stage. So that's stage 3. So I'm going to receive 36 books from here, and I actually don't have to give a book because I've started this. Also, anyone in stage 2 doesn't have to give a book either because there's no one 2 stages above. But everyone else in this scheme will have to send at least one book. But they could receive up to 36 books. So, how is this possible? If you only have to send one book and receive potentially 36 books, where are these books coming from? Where are they appearing from? So what I'm going to show you is the overall system has to balance. So if you're gaining books, there is someone on the other end who's losing a book. So we're going to show you why this is a pyramid scheme, why it's illegal, what's actually happening. So you can see it's taken this pyramid-like structure, and at every stage it's increasing in the people involved in the scheme. So it's increasing by a multiple of 6, and you can see at stage 1 it's just myself. At stage 2, 6 more people have been introduced. At stage 3, an additional 36, and so on. And we come to a stage 14 where there's 13 billion people involved in the scheme. Obviously there's not enough, that's not that many humans on the planet, so this scheme can't continue. So the only way this can successfully work is if this goes on infinitely, forever. Then sort of no one loses, but we all know that's not possible. It's got to end somewhere because there's not enough humans on Earth. So the main takeaway from that is you're receiving a book from someone 2 stages below you, and you're sending a book to someone 2 stages above you. So let's see where this goes wrong, who the winners are, who the losers are, and let's take a deeper look at some of the numbers. We're going to make a few assumptions here with this model. So the first assumption is that the 6 people you share it with are also going to share it with 6 people, and they're also going to share it with 6 people. And this is going to continue indefinitely until there becomes a problem. So the problem is going to come between stages 13 and 14. And the reason for that is, for this scheme to work, there needs to be an infinite number of people so that the pyramid can keep on growing. But we know that the population of Earth is approximately 7 billion, and between stages 13 and 14, you need more people than that to keep this scheme going. So we come down to stage 13, assume it's worked up until then. Everyone who's in the scheme has sent one book and they have been receiving 36 books. So it comes down to stage 13. So stage 13 have just sent one book to stage 11. And now they need to find, so the 2.2 billion people approximately in stage 13, they need to find, each one of them need to find 6 more people to bring into this scheme. And then they're going to ideally get their book from someone in stage 15. But we know that there aren't 13 billion people on Earth. So the chain is going to end here, between stage 13 and 14. So let's look at who's benefiting and who's losing from this. So first let's look at the beneficiaries. So stage 1 and 2, if you refer back to the previous tree diagram, was myself at stage 1 and then my sister and the 5 others I shared it with. So here, we're a bit unique in that we gained 36 books because we didn't have to share it with someone 2 stages above. So we just gained 36 books. Whereas people from stages 3 to 11, they're going to gain 35 books because all of them have to send one book. They've got to send one book to 2 stages higher, but they're going to receive 36 books. So those stages are gaining 35 books each. So where are these books coming from? Books aren't like fruits or veggies. They don't just grow. We're not buying a lot of new books, or we're not creating new books. So these people that are gaining these books, where exactly are they coming from? So the losers, basically, stage 12 and stage 13. So stage 12 are losers because stage 14 were never introduced into this scheme. So they're not going to receive a book from stage 14. So stage 12 are losers. Likewise, stage 13, the chain ended there. So there is no stage 15. There is no stage 14 either, really. So stage 12 and 13 lose. They lose one book each because stage 12 gave stage 10 one book. Stage 13 gave stage 11 one book. So they lose one book each. And what I'm going to show you in the next little video, in the next little bit, is that these books are going to add up and equal the books that the people gained. So the overall system has to balance. So even if you are benefiting from this scheme, someone else is adversely affected by it. So let's have a look at those numbers in a bit. Let's break this down now. So we said before the winners are from stages 1 to stage 11. So let's break this equation down. So here we have 7 multiplied by 36. So 7 is the number of people in stage 1 and 2, because remember they gained 36 books because they didn't have to send a book and they received 36. If we break this down, so these are the people from stages 3 to 11. So if we sum all the people from stages 3 to 11, we get this figure here. You can do the calculations, but trust me that I've done it a few times. So if you multiply that by 35, why 35? Because these people had to send one book and they received 36. So they gained 35 books. So if you multiply that and then add it with the multiplication of this is the figure we get. So in this scheme, if it played out theoretically until it could no longer go any further, that's how many books were gained in this scheme. Quite a lot. But so where are these books coming from? So that's what I'm going to show you here. So we identified earlier that the losers of this scheme were in stage 12 and stage 13. They lost one book each. So all those people, if you add the people in stages 12 and 13, and they lost one book each, so you don't need to multiply by anything, just by one, you get this figure. And there you go. You can see that this number and this number are the same. The books gained and the books lost in this system balance out. So it's a redistribution of wealth. The people at the bottom of the chain are sending the books up the chain to the people at the top. So this is your typical pyramid scheme like structure. So if we look at the percentage of people that won and the percentage of people that lost, you can see it's quite incredible that 97.22% of the people involved in this scheme ended up losing. They lost some wealth, in this case one book. But you can see that the percentage of people that increased their wealth, either 35 or 36 books, were only 2.78%. But the exchange of books, 97.22% of people gave all their books to these 2.78% of people in this scheme. So how do we come to that figure? So we sum the total people from stage 1 down to stage 13, and we get the total people. So the percentage of winners, so this figure on top, the numerator is the sum of stage 1 to stage 11 divided by the total people, 2.78%. The percentage of losers is the sum of stage 12 and 13 on the numerator divided by the total people, and that's where you get your 97.22%. So it's quite amazing that I think this is how most pyramid schemes play out, that most people do end up losing, the significant amount of people involved, and there's a small percentage that does benefit, but they benefit greatly in a great amount of wealth. So let's look at a more realistic example. So a few different assumptions here. So here we're going to assume that you can only share it with 3 people, and then they can only share it with 3 people as well. They don't have to share it with 3 people, but it's a maximum of 3. So here I can potentially get a maximum of 9 books, compared to previously when that was 36. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to play out this scenario and see what happens in a more realistic example. So I've shared it with 3 people, Josh, Ajay and Raj, and they've also shared it with 3 people each. So let's follow this branch. So Josh shared it with Nick, Jordan and Owen, and they've continued to share it as well. So I'm going to get 3 books from here, Nick, Jordan and Owen. They're, remember, 2 stages above. So I've also shared it with Ajay, who shared it with 3 people. Shaila and Asha decided not to participate, so they're out. So I'm not going to get books from them. But that's alright, I'm still receiving books. Sidhu shared it with Gautam, so I'm going to get a book from Sidhu because he wants to keep going on with this scheme. And again here, Roger shared it with 3 people, almost out, and Matt's decided to get out. So I'm still getting a book from AK. So in total, I'm getting from Nick, Jordan, Owen, Sidhu and AK. So 5. So I've just gained 5 books. And remember, I don't have to send to anyone because I've started this scheme. Okay, so let's look through this branch. So Josh also doesn't have to send a book because there's no one 2 stages above. But, so he's shared it with Nick, Jordan and Owen. Nick shared it with a girl he used to work at Bunnings with. Apparently she was 7 foot tall, but she's out. She's not partaking. Josh also shared it with Jordan, who shared it with Alana and Maddie. Alana didn't want to partake. Maddie did, so she shared it with Lil, but it stopped there with Lil. But let's go back up here, sorry. So when the Bunnings girl decided not to share the book, Nick lost 1 book because he sent me 1, but the chain didn't go on. So Nick lost a book, so put that there. So Nick lost 1 book. And then here, so Jordan shared it with Maddie, who shared it with Lil, but Lil was out. So Jordan was meant to receive a book from Lil, but she didn't continue with this game. So Jordan lost 1 book because he sent me 1, but he didn't receive 1. So Jordan also lost 1. Maddie also lost here because she would have got 1 from the people Lil shared too, but the chain didn't continue. So Maddie's also a loser. So we come here through Owen. So Owen shared it with Sarah and Nat. So Sarah's out, but he shared it with Nat, who shared it with 3 people, Milan, Keegs and Scott. But first let's come back and have a look at Josh. So Josh got 1 book from Maddie. So Maddie sent Josh a book. And also Nat has sent Josh a book. And Josh didn't have to send anyone. So Josh is up by 2. Okay. Then let's look at Owen. So Owen sent it to Nat, who sent it to Scott, Keegs and Milan. Keegs is out, so that's cross that out. But Scott's decided he likes reading, so he's in. So he's sent Owen 1 book. And Milan has also shared. So Milan sent Owen a book. So he's got 2 books here, but he had to send me 1. So Owen is up by 1. And okay, so Scott shared it with one of his UK friends, but he didn't want to play. So Scott's going to lose here because the chain hasn't continued. So can we add that in? So Scott's a loser. And then here, so Nat shared it with Milan. Well, we'll fix that up in a sec. So Nat shared it with Milan, who shared it with Danny, who shared it with Tarina. So Tarina's ended it down here. So Milan's going to lose because he was meant to get a book from Tarina. Yeah, you can add that. But he sent Owen a book. So he's down by 1. Also, Danny's going to lose because she sent Nat a book, but it hasn't continued there. So Danny's lost, Milan's lost. So let's have a look at Nat. So Nat has got, so Nat's getting a book from Danny, but he had to send Josh 1. So actually, sorry, that should say Scott, not Nat. So just change that. So yeah, that's Scott there, and that's 1. So Scott was the loser because he sent Owen a book, but he hasn't received any. So Nat's actually neutral. So Nat has sent Danny a book. Oh, sorry, no. Nat has sent Josh a book, and he received 1 book from Danny. So Nat is our first neutral. So he hasn't benefited from this, or he hasn't lost out. So we identified Milan lost 1. Yep, so we're done with this branch. So let's move to this branch now. So we identified earlier that Ajay shared it with these 3 people. Shaila and Asha decided not to continue. So he shared it with Sidhu, who shared it with his brother Gautam, but he's out. So what's happening here? So Sidhu sent me a book, but the chain's ended there. So he's not going to receive a book. So he's another loser in this scenario. Let's look at Ajay. So Ajay has not had to send a book, but he's not receiving a book because these 2 people he shared it with didn't continue, and Gautam didn't continue. So he never received a book. So he's another neutral. So that chain's finished as well. So now let's look at the final chain here. So Matt and Uma were out, so let's look at AK. So she's shared it with Yash and Prak. Yash is out. Then Prak has shared it with two people, Shaz and Jesse. So let's look at my sister first, Rog. So she's going to receive a book from Prak here, and she didn't have to send one. So she's a winner. She gets one book. Now let's look here. So Jesse's out here, so she decided not to continue. So AK is going to get a book from Shaz, but she had to send me one. Is that right? Yep, so AK is another neutral actually. Yep, so she got a book from Shaz and then she had to send me one. She's another neutral. So Shaz shared it with Sharanya, shared it with Keith. Keith is out. And so Sharanya's going to lose here. And Sharanya and Shaz are both going to lose in this. Like Keith coming out, he's not sending Shaz a book. She had to send AK one. So that's what's going to happen there. So I think we've covered everything here. So now let's look at the totals. So I got 5 books, Josh got 2 books, Owen here got 1 book, and Rog got 1 book. So that's a total of 9. And the losers, so everyone who sent a book but never received a book. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's a total of 9. So as you can see here, all the losers in this pyramid scheme were at the bottom of the chain. And the winners all came from somewhere higher. So I was up there, Josh was here, Owen was here. The reason he is a winner is because his chain kept going. So if your section keeps expanding, you'll also be a winner. So that's why Owen ended up a winner, and Rog was also up high. Even though RJ was high, because his chain abruptly stopped, that's why he was neutral. He didn't lose though, because he didn't have to send a book. But as you can see, it's a redistribution of, in this case, books, but usually the pyramid schemes are wealth going from the bottom up to the top. And you can see that when people are gaining wealth, in this case books, it is coming from somewhere, and it's coming from the people at the bottom of the chain who are paying for it. So I hope that makes more sense in a more realistic example of how this could play out if you're partaking in a book exchange.